Hello everyone, my name is Conrad on behalf of Camera Stuff. Thank you for joining tonight. Tonight we are going to chat about what Godox flash to choose. So if you're buying your first flash or maybe you want to upgrade what you already have, I think this video will serve your curiosities. So we're going to talk about the different flashes that Camera Stuff sells. I'm going to touch on some flashes that we don't sell, just for the sake of interest, but mostly the flashes that we sell here at Camera Stuff. So if you're just joining, as usual, please do introduce yourself. Tell me where you're from. And as always, if you have any questions to ask, please do so in the comment section. So I'm just going to give it a few extra moments just to have more people join. So as you can see, I'm sitting here in the complete dark, in the middle of load shedding at the moment. So I think that may switch on in about half an hour's time. So hence the darkness. Hopefully my UPS survives, hence hard alive. Okay, so we have a good chunk of people already. So I think we are just going to go ahead. All right, just preparing my slideshow. All right, so I think we can go right ahead. All right, so in terms of new Canon cameras, the entry-level cameras, unfortunately, Canon has made a bit of a decision. They have removed the center hot shoe contact point. Now, that contact point is necessary to activate the flash. All of those surrounding pins, that just sends clever data from the camera to the flash itself. So with that censored pin removed, unfortunately, can't use old-fashioned flashes or certain flashes that don't have that, or should I say, that only have the centered contact point. So I think this is Canon's way of preventing you from using alternative brand flashes or no-name flashes in a manner of speaking. So they want you to use Canon originals. So with that centered hot shoe contact point removed, it's going to be rather difficult using, one can say, generic flash equipment. However, Godox has figured out a way around the problem. So what you can do with Godox flashes is use their TTL flashes, provided that the firmware has been recently updated. So Godox has figured a way around this problem, as mentioned, specifically with their TTL flashes. So you can use the TT685, the V860, and the V1 with these entry-level Canon cameras. So as far as the professional Canons are concerned, I'm pretty certain those still do have the center hot shoe point. But for the entry-level Canon cameras, probably just need to make sure which of these flashes you can use. But from my side, I can say that TT685, V860, and the V1 definitely will work, provided that the firmware has been updated. Now, unfortunately, with Godox manual-only flashes and a lot of other generic flash equipment, only those generic flash equipment only having the center contact point, that will not work on these Canon cameras, unfortunately speaking. So with the TT600 and the V850, these are Godox's dedicated manual-only flashes, and unfortunately, these won't work on those Canons. However, a way around the problem is to use a trigger, any of the Godox X triggers, so that being the X2 or the X Pro. You can use that as a trigger, and then you can use one of these manual flashes off camera. So just to reiterate, you can use a Godox X trigger, either the X2 or the X Pro, that will activate the manual-only flash off camera. Okay, so there are ways around the problem. So if you have a Canon entry-level camera, just contact Camera Stuff, just make sure what is compatible and what isn't compatible. So I just wanted to get that out of the way straight off the bat, because it is a question that pops up every now and then. People have the Canon entry-level cameras, they buy something and it just doesn't work. So the problem doesn't lie with the flash per se, it's just Canon's decision to remove that center hot shoe contact point. All right, so as we continue, I'm going to talk about some of the main category of flash features. Then we're going to tackle the individual Godox Speedlight, so we're going to do that right at the end. But just to get some of the terminologies out of the way, just to make certain everybody's on the same page as far as features and whatnot and flash technologies are concerned, I'm just going to tackle a handful of them before we get into the specific Godox flashes. All right, so when buying a Speedlight, you want to, some of them have different power sources. So some of them use traditional AA batteries still, and some of the more recent ones, one can say from the last 4 or 5 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, use something called a lithium-ion battery pack. All right, so this is a choice you have to make from the beginning. Do you want a flash that uses AA batteries or one that uses a lithium-ion battery? Now, all of them have their pros and cons, as I'll tackle just now. So, broadly speaking, one can say with a lithium-ion battery, they are far more efficient in terms of the number of flashes that you can get out of this battery and also the recycle time. So, as a quick comparison, as far as proper quality batteries are concerned, with AA batteries, you may get something like 150 to 250 shots on full power. The recycle time is, comparatively speaking, slower as well. So 2.5 seconds to about 4 seconds. With a lithium-ion battery, that just provides improvements all round. So that will provide you something between 450 to 550 shots on full power and a much faster recycle time. So with a lithium-ion battery block, you get more flashes per charge and a faster recycle time as well. So maybe asking, what the hell is recycle time? So after firing, the recycle time is the amount of time the flash requires to recharge energy, in a manner of speaking. So when a flash goes poof, it needs time to recharge its components before it's ready to fire again. So a handful of things that influence recycle time, but obviously being the battery type and quality, as we just discussed. So lithium-ion batteries will recycle faster as opposed to traditional AA batteries. The battery charge, so a full battery will recycle faster. A battery that is close to being empty will recycle much, much slower. So it may go from 2 seconds to about 10 seconds when the battery is close to empty. The flash intensity as well. So the flash set at full power will recycle slower. A flash set at a lower power or a dimmer power, in a manner of speaking, will recycle faster. Now, something I don't think relevant here in South Africa, but weather and temperature also does play a part as well. So when it gets hideously cold, that may impact the recycle time. When it gets hideously hot, that may impact the recycle time as well. All right, so if you have a flash or want to buy a flash that uses AA batteries, to quicken up the recycle time, what you can use is an external battery pack. So with an external battery pack attached to the flash itself, that will provide more flashes and a much faster recycle time. Now, in saying that, these external battery packs do tend to be quite expensive. They are about the price of a flash itself. So hence the reason why we don't really stock these external battery packs. They are a little bit too expensive for what they provide, because buying a Speedlight with a lithium-ion battery, that's actually cheaper to buy. Okay, but if you do have a flash with AA batteries or looking to buy one, if you want to quicken up the recycle time and have more flashes with it, you can get yourself an external battery pack. All right, so with the lithium-ion batteries, one can say their greatest strength is also a bit of a weakness as well. So these flashes are prone to overheating just a little bit faster. And it makes sense, right? If the flash fires faster and you get more flashes, the flash is going to overheat just a little bit faster, comparatively speaking. So the reason for that is because these flashes don't have an active cooling system. So they don't have cooling fans, they don't have a massive heat sink, they don't have proper ventilation whatsoever. So all of that excess temperature is trapped within the flash itself. Some of it may be expelled outwards, but a lot of that temperature is going to trap inside. So because these lithium-ion batteries are so efficient at what they do, they kind of just generate more temperature, just a little bit faster in comparison to that of AA batteries. Now, a plus of the AA batteries is that they are widely available. They're not going to go away anytime soon. A specific lithium-ion battery may go extinct or get discontinued after a few years. So it's a cool thing about AA batteries is that they are going to stick around for a very, very long time. And it also makes the purchase of AA batteries just a lot easier as well. So you can go to a petrol station or a Spar or a Checkers, whatever it may be. So if Murphy's Law strikes, for example, if the batteries don't work anymore, you need a new set of batteries, you can just quickly run into the shop and buy a set of AA batteries. The same cannot be said about lithium-ion batteries. You need to come to a shop like Camera Stuff or any shop that sells Godox batteries if you need a quick plan B. Right, so overall, practically speaking, lithium-ion batteries are just easier to use, manage, store, and charge, as opposed to just a mountain of AA batteries. I remember when I used to do weddings a long time ago, I had to charge something like 24 AA batteries just in preparation for the wedding itself. Now, if I'm still going to do weddings, I'm not going to do weddings anytime soon, but all I need would be about 2 lithium-ion batteries at maximum. Okay, so on topic with the overheat issue. So all of the modern Godox flashes have an overheat prevention mode. So when the flash gets a little bit too hot, the flash will automatically slow down its recycle time. So if we're used to 2-second recycle time, so that's going to go to 5 seconds, if not 10 seconds. So this is a question that we often get at Camera Stuff. People will buy a flash and say that the recycle time is just a little bit too slow. Normally what the case is that the flash is overheating and you just need to slow down a little bit. And also that overheat prevention mode may have triggered just to slow down the recycle time, just to protect the flash from excess overheating. All right, so this is something you can check in the manual as well. So there's a little graph that will display how many flashes and at what intensity in quick succession are most likely to trigger this mode. So normally about 20 shots, especially in high-speed sync, at full power in quick succession, that will trigger the overheat prevention mode. All right, so this is our series of Godox flashes that use lithium-ion batteries. So it's the V850, the V350, the V860 Mark III, and the V1. Right, so all of these batteries are included with the flash itself. So that's a cool thing about these Godox flashes, is that the lithium-ion battery and a charger are included with the package as well. This is the range of AA batteries, the TT350, TT600, and TT685. The Mark II and the previous version will use AA batteries. All right, so just as a final note before we get to the next topic, now just to reiterate a couple of points. So when buying a flash, you have a choice. You can use a flash with AA batteries or that use AA batteries, or a flash that uses lithium-ion battery pack. So the lithium-ion battery packs are just far more efficient all round, more flashes per charge, quicker recycle time as well. The only downside is that you can't buy these batteries, at a corner shop or anything of the sort. So it's a good idea just to buy a spare just in case. However, if you have a flash that uses AA batteries, if you want to quicken up the recycle time, you can use an external battery pack. And it's also neat having such a flash is that you can buy these batteries basically everywhere. All right, so let's talk about the different flash modes, shall we? So most flashes, if not 98% of the flashes out there, will have both main flash modes available, that being manual and TTL. However, some flashes have omitted the TTL in favor of being strictly manual. So that just saves you a bit of cost, because these manual-only flashes do tend to cost a little bit less, comparatively speaking. And photographers, well, some photographers, should I say, prefer the manual mode as far as the flash mode is concerned. So if you're one of those photographers that use manual mode exclusively, then why buy a flash that has TTL mode? So you can spare a little bit of cash by going the manual route. However, sometimes it's nice having both options available. So as I said, most flashes will have TTL and manual available to use whenever, for whatever circumstances. So just to explain what TTL is. So TTL basically is an auto mode. So the camera measures the amount of ambient light passing through the lens, which, by the way, that is what TTL stands for, through the lens, and then calculates the amount of flash power you need per given shot. So the ambient light reflects off your subject and will enter your lens, goes through the lens, and will hit your sensor. From there, your camera and flash will do a bit of a tag team effort to calculate how much flash power you need per given shot. So the camera receives the flash data and uses it to modify the flash power to create what it perceives to be a well-balanced photo. So theoretically, in actuality, this can work rather effectively, but the results tend to be quite inconsistent. Hence the reason why some photographers don't like using TTL, because you get up and down results. So similar to using your camera in its full auto mode, you're going to get up and down results here and there. So TTL, one can say, is better for run and gun photography. So where inconsistent lighting and distancing may happen. So things are rather helter-skelter. TTL is a good mode to use. If the ambient light changes, if you're running around after brides and grooms, kiddies and dogs and whatnot, TTL is a rather good option to use. because, well, most of the time it will get the settings more or less right. So we'll put you in the right ballpark in a manner of speaking. If the results are slightly up and down, then, well, that's easy enough to fix in Photoshop. Okay, this is the range of TTL and manual flashes that we have available. So these flashes have both modes available. So that being the TT350, V350, the TT685, the V860, and the V1. So if you want smart features in a manner of speaking, these are the flashes that you need to look at. All right, let's talk about manual mode. So with manual mode, the flash intensity needs to be manually adjusted via the flash control panel or via a compatible trigger. So if you use the flash off camera, you can use a Godox trigger to control the output manually. So in other words, you can go up with the power or down with the power, depending on what you need per given shot. So manual mode requires a bit of a learning curve, and some pre-test shots may be required to determine the correct setting. So manual mode is good for set it and forget it in a manner of speaking. So once you have established the correct settings, you can just stick with it, and all of the flash exposures will be exactly the same, unless you move a light or your subject moves, or if you change some camera settings. So just to repeat, set it and forget it with manual mode. Once you have the correct settings, you can just go on a frenzy thereafter, and all of the flash exposures will be exactly the same. So one can say with manual mode, it offers repeatability and consistency. So the manual only flashes that we have at camera stuff, that would be the TT600 and the V850. So the TT600 that uses AA batteries, and the V850 uses the lithium-ion battery block. All right, so as mentioned with manual, that just allows you to save a little bit of cash, because these manual only flashes tend to be a little bit cheaper than their equivalent TTL cousins. But as mentioned, all Godox TTL flashes will have both modes available, giving you more options to play with. All right, so let's talk about front curtain sync and rear curtain sync now. All right, so when using a slower than normal shutter speed, typically in low light conditions, one can activate the flash at the beginning of the exposure, that is normal sync or front curtain sync, or at the end of the exposure. So when you have, let's say, a 5-second shutter speed, you can choose to activate the flash at the beginning of the 5 seconds or at the end of the 5 seconds. So using this technique, one can allow the ambient light just to soak a little bit, allowing the background to get brighter in relation to the flash exposure. Now, when using rear curtain sync, that just creates a cleaner subject. So when you think about it, when the flash activates at the beginning, the background will start soaking thereafter. And that will make your subject just kind of blur into the surroundings. So with rear curtain sync, the flash will activate at the end, and that will just create a cleaner subject in a manner of speaking. And also with rear curtain sync, one can capture movement blur or motion blur, whatever you want to call it, more intuitively using rear curtain sync. So in essence, using rear curtain sync, the motion blur will go behind the moving object. I'll show you a graph as to what that looks like. Right, so with front curtain sync, sorry, losing my words here. Front curtain sync, so the flash will activate at the beginning, and thereafter the ambient light will just kind of soak into the 5 seconds, for example, if you're using 5 seconds. But as you can see, the blur kind of goes ahead of the subject. Now that looks a little bit counterintuitive. Kind of looks like the subject is reversing very fast. Now, with rear curtain sync, the flash will activate at the end of the exposure, thus providing motion blur behind the subject. All right, so just to explain what I mentioned just a little bit earlier. So on a left-hand graph or illustration, this can normally happen. So when you use a flash with a relatively fast shutter speed, you get a rather dark environment, a dark background. So this looks a little bit weird. It looks a bit like a studio shot. So if you want to soak that background a little bit, you can slow down the shutter speed. So with both of these illustrations, the flash have been activated, but on the left-hand side, that's with a faster shutter speed, and on the right-hand side, that's with a slower shutter speed. So for slower shutter speed, you just allow the ambient light just to soak a little bit more. All right, so with front curtain sync, That is when the flash activates at the beginning. So you can illuminate your subject with that flash, but then the background will soak thereafter, and your subject will kind of blend into the background just a little bit. With rear curtain sync, as mentioned, you just create a bit of a cleaner subject. All right, so before we tackle high-speed sync, if you have any questions to ask, please do so in the comment section. All right, I have a question here. What is the maximum mAh in the batteries? That is brand and model specific. Some go up to 3000 mAh, some kind of hang around 2000. Obviously, the mAh relates to the overall capacity that the battery has. So the higher the number, the better the capacity of said batteries. So the bigger the number, the longer the batteries will last, essentially speaking and practically speaking. So there's no set maximum as such. I don't really see batteries out there that have more than 3000. I think that kind of gets into the lithium-ion battery domain, whereas AA batteries kind of max out at 3000. Okie dokie. So let's talk about high-speed sync. So high-speed sync is a feature that is available to certain flashes and certain triggers also. So with high-speed sync enable, you can utilize your flash at shutter speeds more than a 200th of a second, which is your camera sync speed. Okay, so without high-speed sync, you're limited to a fast shutter speed of 200th of a second. So should I say that's the fastest shutter speed that you're allowed to use? Now, if you go above your sync speed, you may get something like this. So I don't know if anything like this happened to you before, where you take a photo with the flash activated, but only half of your image is properly exposed. So you have this black bar creeping into the photo. So this happens when, without high-speed sync, you take a photo with a flash on and your shutter speed is exceeded beyond your sync speed. So when your shutter speed is beyond 200th of a second, this is something that's going to happen. The reason why is because, well, that black bar that you see, that is a shadow of one of the moving shutters that go up and down in front of your camera sensor. So with high-speed sync enabled, that just kind of bypasses the movement of your shutters in front of the sensor by using quick bursts of successive flashes. Okay, I see a question here. When to use front sync? It's a very good question. So when you think about rear curtain sync, that's the best one to use. However, when you have a moving subject and you want to time it perfectly, that is when you use front curtain sync. So with rear curtain sync, you kind of have to guess where your subject will be in 5 seconds time. So that can be a little bit a trial and tribulation. That can require a bunch of test photos. With front curtain sync, that just allows you to time your subject. So when you press the shutter, that is when your flash is going to activate. With rear curtain sync, you kind of need to time your 5 seconds and kind of hope your subject is where the subject needs to be within the frame. All right, so back to high-speed sync. All right, so without high-speed sync, your shutter speed is limited to your sync speed, which is normally 200th of a second. So you can go slower than that, but unfortunately not faster. Using high-speed sync allows you to use faster shutter speeds to capture high-speed movement or to capture dramatic skies or to darken the background even further. A high-speed sync flash can be used in combination with a big aperture. So for example, 1.4 or 1.8 to capture a shallow depth of field. That is in combination with a flash as well. So when you think about it, when it's very sunny outside, 200th of a second isn't really going to darken the skies not very efficiently. So when you have high-speed sync enabled, that can just allow you to quicken up the shutter speed just to darken the skies to acceptable levels. And also in combination with big aperture, that's just going to look lovely. So you have this shallow depth of field with the skies very dark, very dramatic, with your subject properly illuminated as well. So high-speed sync is a fancy feature that is only compatible with certain flashes and certain triggers. So if you want this mode, be sure that high-speed sync is included in the features. Okay, so that is a common feature with the TTL flashes. So again, TT685, V860, and the V1. With the manual-only flashes, you cannot use high-speed sync on camera. So just to repeat, you cannot use it on camera. However, with a trigger, a high-speed sync compatible trigger, you can use these manual flashes in high-speed sync mode off camera. Okay, so just to repeat, PL flashes will have high-speed sync off camera and on camera. Manual only flashes only off camera when using a compatible high-speed sync trigger. So that would be the Godox X2 or the Godox X Pro. All right, so let's get into a topic, maximum power. Essentially, horsepower to flashes, the guide number, GN for short, is a reference number used to indicate the flash's maximum flash intensity. So when looking at the descriptions and specifications, you can find what is known as the guide number. So the higher the guide number, the brighter the flash will be, or the further you can throw this flash also, in a manner of speaking. So a GN, for example, of 55, that is a flash that will be more powerful as opposed to a flash with a GN of 36. So for example, the TT350, that has a guide number of 35, whereas the V860 and most of the flashes that we sell will have a guide number of 60. All right, so if you want to utilize more flash power or have it in reserve when necessary, I will always advise buying a flash with a higher guide number. And it's actually a reason why we don't stock the TT range anymore. So when we talk to our clients and when we point out that the TT350s tend to be a little bit dim, they go ahead with a stronger flash instead. So over time, the TT350s, at least at camera stuff, have become very unpopular in favor of the flashes that are just a little bit more potent. Okay, so just to repeat there, in the descriptions, in the specifications, you'll find the guide number. The guide number relates to how strong the flash is or how bright the flash is, in a manner of speaking. So higher the guide number, the more brighter the flash will be. All right, so let's talk about power range in a moment. But first, I have a question. All right, so when high-speed sync is activated on a TT600, full power is equivalent to what power level? Okay, so this is a very good point. Before I answer, if you drop a comment on one of our Facebook groups, I don't see your name. So you will be displayed as quote-unquote Facebook user. So if you are watching this in one of our Facebook groups, just let me know your name as well. Right, so something I should have mentioned with high-speed sync. When high-speed sync is activated, it's going to dim the overall flash output. Because the flash is activating in multiple bursts, just to bypass the movement of the shutters, it's going to drop from full power to about quarter power or an eighth power or a 16th of the power, depending on how fast your shutter speed is. So there's no strong answer here. So it depends on how fast your shutter speed is. So the faster your shutter speed is, the dimmer your flash output will be. So this is good reason to have a powerful flash, just to compensate for that drop of flash intensity when using high-speed sync. Okay, so when using full power, it's automatically going to drop to like a quarter power or an eighth power, 16th power, even lower than that. So it all relates to the shutter speed that you're using. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. All right, next topic would be the overall power range, the range of available flash power from minimum to maximum output. So with a flash, you want incremental flash adjustments or incremental power. So you want to go from full power all the way down to a very, very low minimum power. And you want incremental steps, granular control in between the maximum and the minimum power. All right, so as useful as a lot of flash output may be, a tiny little spit of light that can also be incredibly useful depending on what you're doing. So if your flash is very close to your subject, for example, if you're taking photos of bugs, or if you're utilizing a very big aperture, you only need a little bit of light. So this is very useful to have that very minimum low output as well. Okay, so flash power is measured in fractions. So 1/1, that is full power, 1/2, half power, 1/4, quarter power, 1/8, an eighth of the power, and so forth. So normally the flash range will be indicated as follows: 1/1 all the way down to 1/128, or 1/1 all the way down to 132. So you want a flash, as mentioned, with a wide power range. So the top option would be better because the flash can drop lower, in a manner of speaking. So you'll have a very, very low minimum output. And as mentioned, sometimes that is very useful as well. So the top option, 1/1 all the way down to 1/, 128, that is 8 steps of full stop incremental power. Whereas we bottom one, I think that's 5 or 6 steps of incremental full stop increments. All right. So again, from Facebook user. So 1/32 is what my MS200 can do in studio. Yes. So so the MS200 being an entry-level Godox strobe, unfortunately can't drop the power any lower than that. So that can be a bit of a hindrance every now and then, because as mentioned, sometimes you just need a little bit of light. So what you can do is kind of double up the diffusers on your softbox, or you can just move your flash away from your subject. Okay, so as mentioned, maximum power is important, but a flash with a very low minimum output can be incredibly useful as well. Okay, so let's talk about zoom range. With the zoom settings, you can select the focus of the light. So in other words, you can spread the amount of light into a wider beam of light or narrow the focus into a quote-unquote spotlight. So I'm just going to show you a video as to what that looks like. All right, so here with the flash aimed directly at a wall, so going through the various zoom settings. So as you can see, the higher the number, the more focused the overall beam of light will be. So going from 20 millimeters, you can see that provides a nice big blanket of evenly distributed light. But as that number increases, you just provide a more spotlight effect. Sorry, I'm just going to drink some water here. Sorry, be within a moment. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so for zoom settings, so you go in flash settings or zoom settings of millimeters, right? So it's 20 millimeters going up to 200 millimeters. So the point of that is typically advised to match the flash output to the focal length of your lens. So sorry, that should be the flash zoom to the focal length of your lens. So some flashes fortunately offer an auto zoom mode that takes care of that task for you. So for example, if you're using a 50 millimeter lens, your zoom setting on your flash needs to be 50 millimeters as well. So if you're using a crop sensor camera, the auto zoom feature will automatically calculate the field of view difference. However, if you use a manual flash without an auto zoom setting, unfortunately that option isn't available. Okay, so just to repeat, with the zoom setting, you can spread the beam of light into a more so bigger angle of light, or you can zoom the light in to create a bit of a spotlight effect. Okay, just checking some comments here. All right, so the zoom setting, if that's rather useful, you can use it creatively as well, or you can use it creatively. So if you want an evenly distributed light to cover an entire wall or your background, you need to zoom the light back. So you need to use 20 millimeters or 28 millimeters. However, if you're taking a photo of a bird in a tree and you want to zoom the light in a manner of speaking and get that extra distance, you can use a bigger zoom setting just to throw the light a little bit further. All right, so now I want to talk about the built-in receiver system that Godox has on offer. So this is called the Godox X system. The Godox X system refers to the Godox X system refers to the flash and trigger ecosystem that Godox has. So all of the triggers and flashes and strobes that are directly compatible with one another in terms of radio frequency is concerned. So all of these flashes and triggers and strobes talk to one another in a manner of speaking without the use or the requirement of additional receivers or gizmos attached. So just to reiterate, traditionally to do off-camera flash, you need a trigger and a receiver. However, the Godox X flashes and X triggers have those receivers, the Godox X flashes have those receivers built in. Okay, so just to reiterate here, so those, traditionally speaking, if you want to do off-camera flash, you need a transmitter and a receiver for the camera to communicate to the flash. However, with Godox X flashes, so these are all the modern Godox flashes, you can only use a trigger and you don't need to buy an extra receiver whatsoever because flash will have that receiver built in. Okay, so the Godox X system refers to the Godox ecosystem of flashes and triggers that talk directly to one another. So with a Godox X trigger, that either being the Godox X Pro or the X2, that will not only activate the full range of Godox flashes, but will also, you can also adjust the flash output from the trigger itself. And if available, you can switch between the different flash modes as well. So you can go from manual mode to TTL mode if the flash is compatible or have those options available. Okay, so Godox has a huge variety of flashes, strobes, and triggers that communicate with one another, thus making Godox a future-proof option as far as long-term investment is concerned. So if you want to build a kit today, Godox is a very good option because you can buy a trigger and a flash today. In future, if you want to upgrade to a bigger strobe or whatever it may be, chances are you wouldn't need to sell anything to make way for new technologies. So the Godox, that X system will be around for quite a while. So with a trigger, you can communicate not only with the recent and modern Godox flashes, but I'm pretty certain in the near future and in the long-term future, Godox will maintain everything within this happy family known as the Godox X system. All right, so you can start off with a budget option, but in time invest in quote-unquote better gear. The same triggers and flashes will still be compatible with one another. They'll still talk to one another. Therefore, chances are very high that Godox gear that you already have will not be dead-ended anytime soon. Before purchasing a Godox trigger or strobe or flash, just make sure that it's Godox X system compatible. So that's a very good feature, and it's the reason why we like Godox so much. All right, so let's chat about the rectangular head versus the round head. So you may have seen the V1, that being the round head flash from Godox. So why do you need a round head as opposed to rectangular head? So just in comparison, on the left-hand side, you can see the rectangular head, and on the right-hand side, you can see the V1, that being the round head flash. So I'm just going to pause here for a couple of seconds so you can gauge the differences. All right, so the round head provides a circular-shaped, evenly distributed throw of light with semi-soft edges. However, with a rectangular head, the quality of light looks rather blocky with irregular lighting patterns. So the round head, when used unmodified, just looks a little bit better, a bit more natural, as opposed to the rectangular head that looks, as I said, rather blocky with irregular lighting patterns here and there. So just to show you the two again. Okay, so rectangular head on the left-hand side, V1 on the right-hand side. Right, so a nifty feature of the V1 is that it's compatible with magnetic light modifiers. For example, what is known as the Godox AKR1 kit. So the AKR1 kit, that is just a kit full of light modifiers. For example, a dome diffuser plate, a snoot, a barn door, grids, gels, etc. That just simply attaches to the front of the V1 using magnets. So you don't need to use Velcro or sticky tape whatsoever. Okay, so that's a bonus of the V1. There are dedicated magnetic lighting modifiers that you can attach directly to it. However, if you're using a rectangular head, you can use something known as the Godox SR1 attachment. So with that attached to the rectangular head, that will also give you the magnetic mount, and that also allows you to use the AKR1 magnetic light modifier kit. All right, so those are the main features that kind of separate all of these Godox flashes. So I'm just going to skim through all of these just to make sure everybody's on the same page. All right, so before purchasing a flash, a big decision you have to make is what type of batteries you want to use. Do you want to use AA batteries or lithium-ion batteries? So lithium-ion battery, I have an example of one here. So this is my personal Speedlight Godox V850. So the battery will look something like that. Yeah, very similar to a camera battery. So if that popped in, the lithium-ion battery just is far more efficient. So more flashes, quicker recycle time as well. Okay, so in terms of battery efficiency, if you want to go the route of lithium-ion batteries, from my point of view, that is very advisable. I'm not going back to AA batteries anytime soon, but it is a personal choice. So if you want that safety net in case you lose batteries or the battery goes dud on the same day, if you want to quickly run into a shop and buy batteries, then the AA battery option, that's still completely viable. Right, so second choice you want to make is, do you want to drive manual or do you want to drive auto? Now, most speedlights will have both options available, manual and TTL. However, if you want to save some bucks, you can go with manual-only flashes. They are cheaper than their TTL cousins. So this V850, this is an example of a manual flash because I'm not a fan of TTL whatsoever. So I'm not going to buy a flash that has that TTL option available because I'm not going to use it. So I'm going to save some money and buy the manual dedicated option instead. All right, so in terms of high-speed sync, all of the Godox modern flashes will have high-speed sync. However, a nuance here is that the manual-only flashes that will only do high-speed sync off camera with a compatible trigger. All of the TTL ones will do high-speed sync on camera and off camera with a compatible trigger as well. So as far as power range is concerned, all of these flashes have a very wide power range. The V860 and the TT685, that can be dropped just a stop lower. So if you're interested in a flash that has very, very low minimum output, the TT685, the V860, and the V1, should I say, this will offer you that extra drop of light. Right, so that would be the Godox flashes kind of separated by their main categories. Now we're going to jump into the specific Godox flashes, and then we're just going to go through all of these specific features. And right at the end, I'm going to ask you a question. What camera do you have? What type of photography do you do? And I'm going to try and advise you what Godox flash may be best for you. Okay, going back to my slideshow. All right, so first let's do the Godox TT600. So this is our budget-friendly option from Godox. The TT600 offers the essentials. So I'm just going to maximize that for some of those that are watching on mobile. So the budget-friendly option from Godox for TT600 offers all of the essentials, especially if you're interested in doing off-camera flash. So it provides plenty of flash power. It has a guide number of 60, which is kind of flagship range. And it has to be adjustable power range as well. So all of the essentials as far as flash photography is concerned, especially off-camera flash photography is concerned. So what else may you need? Well, the TT600 doesn't have any TTL modes whatsoever. So it's completely manual. That just allows you to spare a bit of cost as well. But if you want that TTL, if you want that auto mode, then unfortunately with the TT600, that mode is not available. Okay, and it should be mentioned that the Godox TT600 that uses AA batteries as opposed to the lithium-ion batteries. So this speedlight's about 2,000, 2,200 Rand, thereabouts. All right, so the TT685 that is very similar to the TT600, although this does provide TTL mode. So all of the fancy smart features, rear curtain sync, front curtain sync, all of that, that is available with the TT685. But like the TT600, that only uses AA batteries. So this is about 3,000 Rand, more or less. All right, so with the Godox V850 Mark III, so this is our manual flash that uses a lithium-ion battery. So just like the TT600, no TTL features whatsoever. So if you want a comparatively speaking cheaper lithium-ion battery speedlight, the V850 is the option for you. So this is about 3,300 Rand thereabouts. But as mentioned, the battery and a charger are both included. So typically with AA battery speedlights, the batteries and the chargers will not be included. So the cool thing about the speedlights that have the lithium-ion battery or use the lithium-ion batteries, those batteries and chargers will be included within the box. Now, if you want TTL and lithium-ion battery power, the V860 Mark III, that is the option for you. Yep, so all of the smart features are available. Lithium-ion battery block, that's just far more efficient in terms of number of flashes and recycle time as well. In addition, you have a little LED modeling lamp that's on the body itself. Now that just provides a wee bit of a video light. So at a wedding, if you need to switch from flash power to video light, now the V860 does provide both options. Now, it must be said that light is not stupidly bright, but it's just bright enough to kind of find your way in a very dark reception or nightclub or whatever it may be. All right, so the V1, that is the Godox flagship. So that with a round head, TTL, manual mode will be available, very powerful, guide number of 60. The only downside of the V1 essentially is that it has a limited zoom range. So it only goes from 28 to 105, whereas all of the previous flashes that I've spoken about, that goes from 20 to 200 millimeters. So just get a bit of extra zoom out of those rectangular heads as opposed to the round head. But overall, the Godox V1, that's the granddaddy of them all. So all of the features that you need, TTL, manual, the lithium-ion battery, that's included as well with this charger. Very high guide number, very powerful flash. So if you want options, versatility, if you want the entire package, the V1 definitely is the one I would advise for you. All right, so there are some flashes that we don't sell in camera stuff. The TT range and the V range. So the TT350, that is a compact flash. So it's very, very small in comparison to the all bigger cousins. But as mentioned, the overall output is very, very dim. It's almost not that great for off-camera flash. For on-camera flash, you need to be rather close to your subject. You need to boost your ISO just to compensate for that lack of light. And as mentioned, once we start talking to our clients about this, they go for the bigger, more powerful options. So hence the reason why, at least at camera stuff, why we have discontinued the smaller Godox flashes. Also, there is a TT52 that you may find somewhere else. At camera stuff, we don't sell this because it's very, very basic. Yes, they are quite cheap to purchase. About 1,400 Rand, but it's a bit of a dead-end flash. So it doesn't have the Godox X system. It uses the AA batteries, and the guide number is about the same as the TT flash as well. So the guide number is about 55. So it's a very, very dim flash as well. So yes, you save a bit of money, but in the long term, you want that Godox X system. You want that extra bit of light. So my advice there is to save up an extra 500 Rand or so and get the TT600 as instead. All right, so that's the end of my slideshow. So I don't know about you. In case I missed something, if you want to ask any other questions, please do pop them in the comments, and yeah, I'll tackle them right at the end. So we are nice 48 minutes in. So it's been a rather lengthy, nice, long live video. I'm just going to check the comments and see if I have any questions. All right, so what's your view between the lithium AAs and the NIMH? So I think this would be comparing the rechargeables versus the non-rechargeables. All right, so when using a flash, it's practically better just to use the rechargeable batteries. So you're going to use the flash over and over and over again instead of buying batteries over and over and over again as well. It's better just to recharge those batteries in between shoots. This used to be a big talking point, right? So with the rechargeable batteries, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they used to lose their power quite quickly, right? So if you weren't using the batteries, if you left the batteries in a camera, in the flash, or you've left the batteries in the camera bag, they would discharge very quickly. Now, so overnight, you'd lose about 20%. In a week's time, you'd lose about half the charge. And in about 2 weeks' time, the entire battery will be drained. However, modern rechargeable batteries don't have that problem. That is if you buy the good quality ones. At Camera Stuff, we sell the Inner Loop brand. So those batteries don't discharge over a long period of time. So it's a bit of an anecdote, but we have a client. He came into the store the other day. He purchased some batteries just before the pandemic hit. Because the pandemic hit, he wasn't using his camera whatsoever. So he bought some Inner Loop AA batteries. Now, recently, now that we're allowed to go outside and take photos, he just took those batteries out of the packet and they still had 95% of their charge. So that's the great thing about good quality AA batteries. They don't discharge over a period of time. The older ones, the not so good quality ones, they will lose their charge over time. As far as non-rechargeables are concerned, those are better used for devices that are not power hungry. So for your TV remote, for your air refreshers, Xbox controllers and whatnot, those are the ones that you want to use your non-rechargeables for. As far as power hungry devices are concerned, that being camera flashes, it's better to use the rechargeable ones because their output is just a bit more consistent and a bit more stable. All right, so let's see what else is available here as far as comments. All right, question from Pierre. What can you tell us about the diffusers that you can use on your rectangular flashes during house photography? All right, so one basic rule here applies, and it's one of the golden rules of lighting. The bigger the light is relative to your subject, the softer the light will be. So a diffuser that you attach to your flash, that's not going to change the size that greatly whatsoever. In fact, it's the same size. There's little diffuser cups which you attach directly to your flash head. That's only going to diminish the light output a little bit. In terms of softness, you need to think big. So you can change the effective size of your light by using different light modifiers. So the bigger the softbox may be, the softer your light will be. The bigger the umbrella will be, the softer the light will be. So unfortunately, with a flash on top of your camera, you don't have enough space to work with as far as big light modifiers are concerned. So you can use a little diffuser that can enlarge the light source just a little bit, but it's not going to make a pronounced difference whatsoever. I think for house photography, your best bet is to bounce the light off a wall or a ceiling. When you bounce the light off a ceiling, that kind of expands the size of the light, and that will bounce back down onto your subject and will provide a much softer light. So these tiny little diffusers and soft boxes actually don't do a lot in terms of light quality or improving the light quality. If you want super duper soft lighting, bounce the light or take the flash off camera and use it with a big softbox or umbrella. All right, so which brand is good for AA batteries? As mentioned, we sell the Eneloop brand. The guys up front in our shop, the sales guys, they often refer to it as the Rolls Royce of batteries. They do tend to be quite expensive, comparatively speaking, but they do last long. They're very consistent. They don't discharge. Batteries, all of them have a finite lifespan, so they do go dud after about 3 to 4 years, whereas Innerloops just survive a little bit longer as well. So yes, they do cost a little bit more, but as far as practical uses and efficiency are both concerned, the Innerloops do just operate a lot better. Beyond camera stuff, I've heard good things about the Power X brand as well. Now the Amazon brand I've heard is quite good as well. The Duracells also good. They do have a big capacity, so you get more flashes out of them. So I think my advice to you would be to check online and check on certain sites. There are quite a few of them that review all of these different batteries when used in camera flashes. So that's the reason why we choose the Eneloop brand, is because they tend to score quite high as far as those comparisons are concerned. So from my side, definitely go for the Eneloop brand. All right, so let's see what else we can do tonight. All right, so the point of us doing these lives is to be interactive with you guys. So if you have any questions regarding anything I just mentioned during the entire live, please do drop that in the comment section. If you have anything related to anything I haven't talked about or something that I may have missed, please do mention that as well, and I'll try and explain that as well. Okay, let's talk about different types of photography and which flashes will be good for what. Now, if you're a people photographer and the person isn't running around anytime soon, so if you're not chasing after people, if you have a model standing still and you have time to set up your lighting and get the proper settings, then manual flashes will do you quite well. If you're in a studio, manual flashes as well. So you can save a bit of bucks and buy a manual dedicated flash, or you can go with the more expensive option, that being TTL flashes that have both options available just in case. If you're doing wedding photography, event photography, if you're chasing after people, if the lighting conditions are irregular, inconsistent, if the distancing between you and your subject, if that is non-consistent as well, then TTL flashes definitely will be more so practical to use. All right, got a question here. Which softbox do you recommend for flash? I'm using the TT685. All right, so is that for off camera or on camera? So for on camera, the bigger the thing, the softer the light will be. But obviously, you have limited space, limited room for a big thing. Also, it depends on what is physically practical as well. Obviously, you don't want a big thing on your camera that's just going to get in the way. For off-camera use, I have an entire video dedicated for this. So as mentioned, the golden rule here is the bigger the thing is, the softer the light will be. So my advice, go for a 95 centimeter octagonal softbox or a 120 centimeter octagonal softbox. So the reason why I recommend a round softbox is because, well, if you're taking photos of people, we have round faces, so it makes sense to use a round light shaper as well. Okay, so that would be my recommendation. Go for the Godox 95 centimeter folding softbox or the 120 centimeter folding softbox. Just make sure that you get the S bracket with it as well. So the speedlight bracket, that just enables you to use your speedlight with one of these bigger softboxes. So let's see, is it possible to use a speedlight and a softbox when shooting in daylight? Yes, most certainly. So I say speedlight is just powerful enough to operate within very harsh sunny conditions. But if it is incredibly sunny outside, very bright outside, I'm going to recommend going for a strobe instead. So like an 8300 or an 8400 thereabouts, minimum 200 watts, 300 watts, just to compete against the very bright and sunny conditions. A speedlight will still get the job done, but as mentioned, you're going to need to use your speedlight at full power, and speedlights do overheat faster. So you don't want to use your speedlight at full power for too long, too successively after one another. So, so if you want to do daylight photography in harsh conditions, you want to get that more so powerful strobe just to compete against the sunlight just a little bit better. I've used speedlights with relative success, up and down success for a very, very long time. When I started out doing wedding photography, I used speedlights exclusively. You can make it work. You just need to be wary of that overheating problem. And obviously combining that with a softbox. Yeah, the softbox is only going to rob about a half a stop or a stop of light. So it's only going to reduce 50% of the light. Or sorry, 200% of the light, should I say. So you're going to lose half the amount of light. All right, so softbox, yes, definitely use that in combination with a speedlight just to create a softer quality of light. All right, so we're touching an hour. So if you guys don't have any other questions to ask, I think I'm going to call it quits from my end. So if you want to keep me around for longer, drop those questions right now. All right, so to kind of cap off, do you guys feel satisfied with your life? Did you have your answers, your questions answered? Do you have a better idea as to what new speedlight you need to buy? What the differences are between all of the Godox speedlights? Do you have a good impression as to which is better than the other as far as your own personal work is concerned? Yeah, I like to say if people don't have questions, that meant I did a good job with the live. So all questions have been answered, at least internally. All right, so what about Black Friday discount? Stick around, we have some good news. So the I can't give away too much, but we are going to have Black Friday specials. Yes, definitely. So the last week of November, stick around, see on the Camera Stuff website what we're going to offer. So yes, as I said, I can't give away too much, but stick around. The last week of November, we're going to have some specials. Okay, but we have some other Black Friday discounts available. That's our month-long promotion, so that's only select products. So we have about 60, 70 products on special at the moment. Let me see if I can find that. Here we go. So on our website, if you go to the last tab, Black Friday sale. Now we call it our Limelight sale, just to be funky, but we have a selection of stuff on special running at the moment. So that is for the entire month of November. But as mentioned, we have something cooking as far as the last week of November is concerned. Okay, so that's what we currently have. If there's something here that's not for you, as I said, stick around for the last week. We're going to have some other specials running as well. Thank you so much. Now, that's good news. I do appreciate the pat on the back every now and then as well. So thank you. Thank you for the positive feedback. So we have a lot more of these coming in the future. So Thursday, we're going to talk about how many lights do you need in studio. So that will be a topic that will explore main lights, full lights, separation lights, hair lights, backdrop lights, rim lights, etc. So starting off with one light, that will be the key light. We're going to build a studio lighting plan, adding one light at a time. We're going to use a program called Satellite 3D. So for that, please do get your questions ready. That's going to be Thursday, 6 p.m. 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m., one of the two. So it's going to be 6:30 or 6 p.m. I'll just need to check which one it is. But just check our events on Facebook. Also, you can go onto YouTube and set reminders for yourself as well. All right, so I think that's going to be it from our side. Yeah, so my load shedding is still not on yet. Still have load shedding. Oh, that's a bummer. All right, so thank you so much for joining tonight. Let me just get my face back. So if you want to keep in touch regarding future live sessions, as I said, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can set reminders. There's an event tab on Facebook as well to keep abreast as far as future lives are concerned. Definitely, there will be more in future. We are planning definitely for one a week, but in future, we are hoping to do 2 or 3 a week. Okay, so if you guys like this, if you're going to stick around and join more future lives, we're going to definitely do a lot more of these. All right, so thank you for joining tonight. That's it from me, Conrad, on behalf of Camera Stuff. Hope you have a pleasant night further. So that's it from me. Good night. So now I have to click the button, and it will be an awkward silence at the end.